You're with Julian on the Brown Notes and a review of It horror film of 2024, Blink Twice. Although I recently reviewed It horror film of 2024, Longlegs, and was not very impressed. This being the directorial, I made that word up because I don't like directorial, debut from Nepo baby Zoe Kravitz, who's worked as an actor so far, I'm sure entirely on her own merit and not due to her parentage. And it's in the long line of recent films, I guess best embodied by the likes of Infinity Pool or The Menu, which are vastly different, but contain the conceit of rich people on an island. So it's either rich people hurting poor people on an island or vice versa. To some degree, in some way, in The Menu, it was a load of rich people going to this impossibly expensive restaurant on an island. In Infinity Pool, it was rich people going to behave like monsters in this poverty-stricken island, and so on. This time around we get the star, who I haven't seen anything else, Naomi Aki, as Frida, who works in a very low-rent job. There's some artistic element to her background I've forgotten already, but she is basically someone that serves drinks at functions where high society people get together, is mistreated by the wealthy folk that employ her, or she serves, and you know, there's that sort of bridge between the two worlds there. She attends a function that is for Channing Tatum, who is Slater King, who is a billionaire who has recently come a cropper for his behaviour, and then has offered these very sincere apologies about it. And I think one of the good elements of this film is about how we accept media apologies from people dependent on how they behave on camera, as it's very clear that Channing Tatum isn't. We're in one way apologetic about it, and due to some misfortune during the event where the Naomi Aki character suffers a cut and falls over, her fault really, I thought, she gets taken to this island for a shindig with billionaires and rich people and famous people. And it's a roll call as well. Some of the actors on here are actually very impressive to see again. Christian Slater is very good in this. That was quite an impressive catch. Haley Joel Osment, Gina Davis, who's pretty good. Carl McLaughlin, he's not used much, but there's still some really interesting people. And they drink, they hang around by the pool, and there's a bunch of chicks and a bunch of guys. Gradually, the lead character, particularly her friend played by Alia Shawkat as Jess, she's the first one that starts to think that things aren't quite right. And as we later find out, she suffers a snake bite, which has an impact on why. But she starts to wonder what's going on. How long have they been there? Every night they get drunk, they take drugs, every day they wake up, every room's got their identical clothing in it, every need is catered for, but something isn't right. And I think we've been down that road a bit on a few films. It's quite laborious to get to the point where that kicks in. I think it's quite repetitious to get to the point where we actually see what's going wrong, because it does seem like half the film is just them going through these motions, and I don't know that's necessary. I can't say that overall I was dramatically impressed by this film. The one thing that I thought was very profound that Kravitz brought to the table, or the writer brought to the table, in this obviously quite feminist trope, was the natural hostility of women to other women in that kind of environment. So the women are all there in their own bubble, thinking that everyone else is their enemy, particularly Adria Arjona, who I'm a massive fan of, And I'm so happy that she's been in 2 prominent movies this year, much more so in Hitman, a much better film than this. I loved her ever since the Triple Frontier film with Ben Affleck. I think it was called Triple Frontier. I love her as an actress. Everyone thinks that they're climbing above their rivals and so on. And I thought that was the best unspoken element of the film, was the fact that who these guys are is they utilize this natural part of women trying to one-up themselves in these environments, because everyone thinks they're on their own, and everyone is actually on their own. They're all in exactly the same position, but they think that everyone else is the friends of all these guys and have known them for years. None of that's true. And then the film becomes particularly dark after the halfway stage as we find out what's going on. I think overall, it's near the back of these rich people on an island films. I thought, Infinity Pool had its faults, but it was so much more button pushing and graphic and extreme and inventive, and no one in this film reaches the heights of mere goth in Infinity Pool. I thought that was a lot more of a challenge and a lot more rewarding than this film is. I thought this film sort of stuttered through its moments and didn't get very compelling until after they started happening, which was half the way through the film. I wasn't that sold on Naomi Aki. I thought she was entirely fine, but not that interesting as a lead character. Adria Arjona was a massive boon to the film when she became the co-lead character. I've loved her in everything she's been in, and she brought a much needed spark to the film. But even a film like The Menu was superb, and the ideas were investigated, and they were a lot more sort of interesting to spend time with. And it didn't, those films didn't take as long to become compelling as this one did. And I think if there's a final sort of nail in the coffin of this film, and people are praising Zoe Kravitz for her directing here, but I don't know. I mean, technically you might say so, but overall the shooting of everything is fine, and the editing is fine, but the narrative flow is not, I don't think, nor is the intrigue. I kind of, expected what was coming because there have been so many of these rich people on an island, but I think the ending of it was incredibly poor. There's this ending which felt like it should have occupied at least 45 minutes or something to get to the audience even buying it. It was such a jut. It was like over in about 3 minutes, and they completely changed everything into a resolution I didn't think morally fitted in with the film either. I was like, is that good that she's done that? I don't think so. But it was a very poor ending that felt like it had been shoehorned in because they'd written it down somewhere and hadn't actually spent any time developing it. So it wasn't a success for me, other than that one sort of element of investigating the rivalry between the women. I thought was quite profound, but other than that, I felt like we'd been down this road quite a few times, particularly in the horror genre. But it's worth a once through. So I'm going to give whatever it's called, Blink Twice, a 6 out of 10.